there's another update.
Namaste and welcome to this 5 p.m. show today. This is going to be in English, and we are going to discuss the marvelous Christian tactics which they have perfected over 2000 years in subverting native civilizations. I think Indian civilization or the Bharatiya civilization is probably the only one which has withstood them quite successfully so far. But they keep reinventing, they keep finding out where they are going wrong, and then they keep reinventing. So we have got an expert here. We got Professor Bharat with us. Namaste, Professor Bharat.
Namaskar.
And though all of you know him well, but one of his distinctions is that he has spent a very long time in Greece. And he knows about the Greek civilization probably more than anybody else in India. And the Christian experiments of subverting the civilization started with the Greek civilization. And of course, he has a long experience of confronting these people and deconstructing their narratives in India also. Bharatji, we had some very, very interesting episode, there's a very popular YouTube channel by Maridas in Tamil Nadu.
I see.
And he interviewed a bishop, I think his name is Estras Sanmugam. And he came out with a wonderful narrative. He said that, okay, what do the Hindus want in India? Hinduism is only 200 years old. And all these people have come from the area which is now in Pakistan, so they should all go to Pakistan. I think it's a wonderful narrative, but the way they work in Tamil Nadu is that somebody says this and then they've got a lot of Christian institutions, or they have a St. Xavier's University, or they have that the Loyola University. Somebody will go and do a PhD on this subject and come out with this PhD. That PhD will be granted.
Yes.
That PhD will be granted by that university, and then that PhD will be quoted to by a number of these people like Shanmugam, people like somewhere sitting in the West, and then they will establish the narrative. Then probably Wendy Doniger will jump in, and Audrey Tushke will jump in, then they will establish this narrative in the West. Well, Hinduism is 200 years old. And you have long experience in recognizing and exposing these narratives, the Christian narratives of subverting various civilizations, whether it is, if they cannot do it by force, then they do it by subverting their practices. So, sir, let's hear you on some of these expertise that these people have developed over 2 millennia, 2000 years, is their expertise.
Yes, thank you for inviting me on this show and talking about this extremely important topic. You see, Christianity came to Greece, and St. Paul, who is called Pavlos, he started preaching in Greece first of all, and then it is from that point that the religion grew and expanded. Now, of course, it has a long history, but in the context of what we are discussing today, that is mainly the tactics as to how you take over. It is important to show that there are different stages in the encounter of Christianity with the older religions, and they always adjust according to their strength, and they work it out pretty much in the same manner in which sometimes the Islamists do. That is, if you are in a very small minority, then you operate differently. You have different injunctions, different code of behavior, different way of relating to the majority religion and subverting it or surviving within it in a specific manner. And once you have attained majority, or as in ancient times, as in the case of Greece, once you attain the royal patronage, then you operate very differently. Now, Christianity in the beginning, all over Greece and in the Mediterranean world, was expanding largely through converting the very poor and converting the slaves. So, you see, here you can see that they go in for that section of population which is oppressed. They are very good at identifying it. Now, reasons for oppression is not to be discussed, nor it is important, because they identify the oppressed and they start working there, and they start giving them a vision of something impossible. They start giving them the vision of heaven. And it was the vision of heaven to the slaves, vision of freedom, vision of the eternal world, celebration of poverty. The poor shall inherit the kingdom of the earth and of course the kingdom of God also. Now this doctrine is something which attracts a lot of oppressed people, and it becomes the strength of Christianity. But once you have a sizable population, how is it that you start encountering the established religion or culture of the region? And what are the tactics that you adopt? Now, the tactics Christianity adopted in Greece was some kind of a submissiveness for first 200 years. But once they became the official religion, under Constantinos or Constantine, once the king became, then things were very different. And then the things were trying to take whatever was sacred, entirely sacred in the ancient religion, and calling it as perverse, as something wrong, as something ungodly, as something devilish. Now this was the tactic you adopt when you are in power. You just gave the example of this Bishop Shadmukham, that he now calls it 200 years old. Now anybody would say that this is almost farcical, that Hinduism is 200 years old. But the fact that he has the gumption to say this, to preach this, and as you said, that they are going to expand on this, this gumption is under the protection of the evangelical world and all those people who are promoting Christianity globally. Now, of course, there is a certain support from the very old doctrine that it is the British who invented Hinduism. You know, we have this circulation that the British invented Hinduism, just as they brought the railroad to India, they brought Hinduism to India. And many people preach that, and American academics discuss it. So it's a takeoff from there. For the sake of academics, they'll say, no, by Hinduism I mean the present form of Hinduism, etc., etc. But the real reason is to make the people of India, the Hindus of India, to declare that they don't belong to this place, that they are 200 years old, whereas the mythical Saint Thomas is 2000 years old. So what you are doing is you are contrasting Saint Thomas, who came 2000 years ago, and we know that it's not the real Saint Thomas who ever came to India. It has been proven.
We know that it's a false story, of course.
It's a false story. But even if he came, let us say, 200 years later, if some other Thomas who came and established the Syrian church, the contrast is with this. So it is by telling a blatant lie, it is by establishing the whole myth of the relevance of Christianity in the face of the older religion. Now I'll give you certain examples from Greece as to how it happened. You see, Christianity has this inveterate hatred towards what we call Saguna Upasana or Murti Puja or idol worship or worship of the eidolon or the icon. So they had to say that the idol is bad, going to the temple is bad. Now, if going to the temple is bad, then everything which you do there, every ritual that you do there is also bad. So, for instance, they would put everything which was sacred and good in the Greek religion, in the Greek culture, on its head. Let's take one example. The simple example is, in English we have a word called anathema, which is which is just an anglicized pronunciation of the Greek word anathema. Now in Greek, anathema means that thing which you receive after you have offered it in some way or the other to the divinity, to the deity. So in Hindu terms, anathema is a Greek prasad of the Greek god.
Right. Right.
Now, the Christians say, don't touch it, don't take it. It is not to be considered as something acceptable. So what was sacred to the Greek, what purified the Greek, becomes unacceptable to the Christian. And it is turning the whole thing on the head. And it is from here that the word anathema means something unacceptable, something terrible, something horrible. And that's the meaning of the modern English word anathema. Now let's take another example as to how cultural destruction is done by Christianity, was done, and it continues to be done today in India. It's very specific. See, according to the Christian doctrine, man is created in God's own image.
Right.
And we have this famous painting by Michelangelo where we have an old man creating a young man, which is Adam, supposedly Adam. You know, the two fingers are touching. So an old man is creating a young Adam in his own image. That's the classic example of the Christian doctrine, illustration. So if man is created in God's own image, then if man takes up the image, let us say, of another man or of a mythical character, then that is not permitted. Then that is the act of devil. Just as the devil, Lucifer, became a snake and then whispered into the ear of Eve that she should eat the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and God wants her to be ignorant, God wants her to be, her husband to be ignorant, just as he deceived her. Similarly, if you change your face, then you are doing what the devil does. Now,
Yes,
all of us know.
Sounds quite ridiculous to me, though.
Yes, of course. To the Greeks, to the Hindus, to a large number of people, it sounds absolutely idiotic because it is like creating a division between creation. That one object of creation is exclusive and different from other objects of creation. But the doctrine goes on like this, that if you put on another man's face or an image or a mask, so for instance, if a Greek actor puts on the mask of, let us say, a mythical character like Achilles or Agamemnon, and he puts on a mask, and the actor does this, then the actor is doing what the devil does. And so if the actor does a devilish act, then whole of theatre is devilish. And therefore, when the Christians came to power, then what they did was, they prohibited theatre. Now most people don't know as to how Greek theatre disappeared from the face of this earth. Even the Westerners don't talk about it very openly. Of course, there are scholars who have written in beautiful and wonderful books and accounts of the whole thing, but the general people don't know. This is how they put to end the great art of Greek theatre, which the Western world says was the birthplace of theatre, that all theatre was born on the face of earth in Greece. But the Christians, because of this doctrine, and the idea of putting on another man's face or becoming another man is something fundamental to a large number of so-called pagan religions. So, in the Hindu doctrine or in all Bharatiya darshanas, there is an absolute unity of being. So I am you, you are me. There is no two, all is one. Ekam advitiyam, there is only one. And we are manifestations of the one. Now the Christian doctrine wipes that out, and the Christian doctrine says that no, there will be no theatre, there will be no theatre, because this takes away the face of the individuality. So, in simple terms, it is the exclusivism and the exclusivist behavior which was promoted. And then when you promote this behavior, then you do all kinds of terrible things, like you break the icons, that you replace the old icons, or that you disfigure them. So if you go to Greece today, you will see thousands, hundreds of ancient statues on the face of which they have etched out a cross, or which they have broken. And there was this whole history, almost 600 years of destruction of the old culture. Now these are some of the fundamental things that happened to the so-called mother of civilization for the West. That is the Greek civilization. Our European friends, British, German, American, they're never tired of telling us that democracy was born in Greece, that civilization took birth in Greece. But they never talk about the kind of iconoclasm and the destruction of the fundamental values of Greece that happened. So this is something which is very significant. Now this tactic is...
the term hypocrisy comes from this theatre only, no?
Yes, I'm glad you reminded me of this. Now, the word hypocrisy, the British word, or the English word, comes from the Greek word hypokrites. Hypokrites. Now, hypokrites only means an actor, a thespis or an actor, somebody who goes onto the stage, जिसको हम अभिनेता कहेंगे, one who is an actor who puts on another face, because the Greeks used to put on mask and costume and hide their own personality. Now, in the Greek system, just as in the Indian systems, the individual player, he wipes out his personal ego and personality and takes up the character of another as an act of submission, creation and dramatic performance. The Christians looked upon it exactly in the opposite way, that he has given up his own original self and hence it is sin. So the actor, the Hippocrates, became the hypocrite in English. That is one who deceives, one who is not talking of the original. And in medieval Christianity, after words from 15th, 16th, 17th century, there were big discussions on what is the role of mask and what is mask something permissible or not. And that's why you find that in Europe they never used mask on theatre. They used to use mask in dances where it was taken for granted that you are hiding yourself, you are deceiving yourself, so that you can seduce partners, or you can do an act of deception. So an act of creation becomes an act of deception. Now, this is how the fundamental role of Christian world is, that they would turn on its head the very fundamental value by which a civilization lives. And they do it very systematically. They do it in a manner that people slowly and slowly don't realize. So, for instance, right now, we know that when Christianity came to the south, they first wanted to become something like a Hindu sadhu. We have the example of Nobili, who dressed like a sadhu and who spoke and who wanted to speak Sanskrit. The whole idea was to prove that the Hindu texts really are talking about Christ. It's pretty much, like some of the Islamic preachers say that the Vedas are really talking about Allah. It's the same kind of tactics, that you inject your doctrine into somebody else's sacred text. So the Christians have been doing this, and they are continuously doing it even to this day. For instance, this whole idea which historians like Trushke promote, that Aurangzeb was not really a destroyer of temples. He was a protector of morality. So it's like turning the truth on its head, you see. I mean, Aurangzeb may have given some money to some feudal lord under him, some chamcha of his personal, and that is taken as an example of great patronage to Hinduism. So this turning the whole thing on the head, the doctrine, is the fundamental strategy.
Okay,
Yes.
that's quite interesting. And of course, we see the only thing is that I think because of the information age and lack of direct patronage right now, and also even during the British time, there wasn't really any direct patronage because the British were more focused on the objects of their imperialism than they were interested in promoting Christianity. But we did see that in Goa, that the Inquisition that occurred in Goa was very brutal and probably as much barbaric as the Islamic brutalities, and probably even more.
Yes.
Because the thing with the Christians was that they also used to apply their brains, unlike the Mughals, unlike the Islamic rulers. And I just, in the context of your Greek history, there's also this very interesting story about how they managed to convert Constantine. And that was also through some kind of deceit or some kind of playing on his mind, because at the time of Constantine, when he became Christian, the Christian population wasn't more than 9 to 10%, or even less. But it is said that they managed to get a Christian woman married to Constantine, and then through her, they kind of won his mind in a way that every time he used to go to battle, then this woman used to send somebody with a cross, and if he started winning the battle, then that horseman with a cross would always be within his line of sight or something. And then this woman, in the intimate moments, would convince him that, okay, you won because of the cross. And then in one of his weaker moments, they converted him.
Well,
is there any grain to the story?
Well, that is, I think, that is more of a hagiography and rewriting in order to help the proselytizers today, or to proselytize those who have been proselytizing Christianity, their preachers, etc. Because historically, the fact is that the population of Christians had increased in very big numbers. You see, what happens with older civilization is, perhaps it's happening with us Hindus also, that we kind of sleep over, that we don't realize that a large number of people around us and in important positions have already intellectually surrendered. They have started believing in something else, which is not their fundamental belief or the belief of their ancestors. So when that shift occurs, it is at this time that political moves are made. And this is what happened with Constantine also. Because he himself, he was a king who knew politics very well. And he thought it was extremely expedient for him to become Christian. And he becomes Christian because of that, and is able to keep his empire under control for that reason. The thing that works very efficaciously in the case of Christians is this kind of conversion of the people who are in some way or the other a little isolated, or they are alienated from the mainstream. So alienation of the catching hold of the alienated people is one of the fundamental tactics of Christianity. It was not the tactic of Islam, and it is not even today, but Christianity has perfected it very well. And then they also develop lots of means of alienating people. Now, in the case of Greece, it was not so easy for first 200 years, because the Christians had taken up one of the major beliefs of the classical world into their own religion. As Arnold Toynbee pointed out, the whole idea of incarnation, or ensarchosis, that is, God takes up a body in flesh and blood. Now this was taken in by the Christians. Christ becomes a son of the Father, and he comes in his human body, sacrifices himself, and all those who shall believe in him shall follow him. So they accepted partially something. Now accepting partially something so that you can talk to people, so that you can communicate with them, this is one of the major tactics of acculturation, which you find Christians have been using right from the very start. I gave you this example of accepting incarnation, partial incarnation. So if you ask a Christian, why is it that God is only a son and not a daughter, and God does not have a wife? You see, then there would never be an answer. Because this taking of just the Son and the Son only was a partial adjustment to the worship of the God in shape, in morphe or in body, which the Greeks used to practice. So they take something, accept it, make it part of the doctrine, and then sell the rest of the doctrine to you. So this acculturation is the second major step that they use. As you can see today, they have a cross instead of Garud Stambh in various churches, etc. And you can find that they have also started making images now in the sculptural style, the ancient sculptural style. And they have started making images which makes up like a Ram Darbar, or which makes like a Krishna Darbar, in which you would find Jesus and Mary and various other saints all together. This would be a semblance given to the mode of worship which the Hindus are doing. So these are the attempts which are made constantly by them. They are very well worked out, and they do Bharatnatyam now in order to tell the story of Christ. The only problem there is that there is not much of the story. You see, it's not possible to go on telling the story for hours and hours like you can go on telling Ramayana or Krishna Leela. But these are all tactics which they have adopted.
And they have also got these sepoys like T.M. Krishna who do it for them.
Well, that is another major tactic of sepoys. Now, in Greece there was another big method which they adopted, and that was that so many saints and so many stories and hagiographies of Christian saints, they followed a pattern like St. John killing the dragon. Now, this was a story which was patterned after Greek myths, where a hero would go and kill a minotaur or another spirit somewhere. So they follow the whole story and they recreate a story according to their own convenience. And then Saint George, for instance, becomes the great patron saint in Greece because he follows the pattern of a myth which was very popular in the pre-Christian world, in the Olympic religion of the Greeks. So taking up the stories and formulating them that way is one of the tactics. But I think in modern times, in modern world, they are more sophisticated because they know that it is not the stories which are going to attract. They are adopting the method of creating a total disrespect and lack of faith in heritage as a whole. You see, for India, the Christian strategy is very different. For India, the Christian strategy is not going to follow the Greek model, or the attack on the Greek Olympian civilization. It is different because India has a very long history, and people have an immense variety of life and culture. So what you have to do is to break the whole idea that India has been a cultural unity. That's why this bishop says that Hinduism is only 200 years old, because he wants to deny the 7,000 or 8,000 years of civilization for which we have archaeological evidence. He wants to deny the continuity. He wants to deny the variety of darshanas and philosophies which have grown over years. So the Christian tactic is always now to create disbelief in heritage, disbelief in cultural values, disbelief in ritual. Now this is very important, because they did this with the Greeks also, disbelief in ritual. And they are doing this with, that's why you have this great attack on ritual, the concept of what is ritual, right from 19th century. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think you have a fair amount of writing on why ritual is important.
That's
Before
true.
we come to that, I would request all my viewers to please start asking questions to Professor Bharatpur, because this, I think, is a very important topic and which needs to be understood in depth if we are having any hope of countering these deep thought out strategies and tactics. Okay, the strategy, of course, is converting the population, and the tactics are very well thought out. They are not coincidental. And so we need to actually go deep into them, and we need to understand how to counter them. In fact, I just thought, when this hagiography was floated, how Constantine became Christian through his wife, I always looked at the example of Sonia Gandhi marrying the Prince of India, the future king. And if you saw what happened during UPA 1 and UPA 2,
Yeah.
I think much of that was actually directed towards generating this disbelief in heritage and demonizing of culture and taking down everything and disrespecting everything that this continuous culture and this unified culture held sacred.
Right.
To take an example of denying that Ram is not a historical person. That was given on affidavit by the UPA government. So I think this whole thing falls into a very neat pattern.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, talking about ritual, you see, the Greek Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, is comparatively more ritualistic than, let us say, the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church is more ritualistic as compared to the Protestant or the Anglican Church. So you find that there is a very clear de-ritualization within Christianity. You see, this is something which happens right from the beginning. But the crux of it is that in order to replace the activity, the sadhana of a people, the way people realize God, the way people want to come to God, you have to demonize the whole procedure of it. That is why you must attack ritual, and you must call all ritual as superstition. You must call all activity as something which is not related to God at all, but which is demonic. The doctrine that this creation is part of the divine, that the creator and the creation are not two, is a Eastern doctrine, or is a doctrine of Hindu darshanas, or all Indian darshanas as a matter of fact. That creation is not different from the creator, and creation is something which takes a real form, and that is why we are worshipful for the creation. That is why everything is sacred to us. The tree is sacred, the river is sacred, the mountain, the cloud, everything, and we look upon it as we look upon ourselves. And therefore every living being is also sacred, because we could be that living being in another lifetime, or we may have been. So this whole unity of creation is denied by the Christian doctrine totally, and then that is put to practice by criticizing the ritual. So all those people who believe that there is a spirit in a tree, you see that there is a spirit of the tree, they have false belief. We are all familiar with the word demon in English. Now the word demon in English comes from the Greek word daimon, and daimon means the spirit or the sattva of, let us say, a tree or a mountain or a river. So every river has a nymph, every tree has a daimon, and there are daimons or the spirits all over. So the Christian said this is wrong. This is one way of denying your unity with the creation, so that man has only a relationship with God as they define, as the Christian doctrine defines, and therefore whatever other cultures do in order to unite themselves with creation is considered as devilish. It is considered as bad. Therefore all ritual is bad. An attack on ritual is cardinal to the propagation of Christianity. This is part of the, part of the prejudice which comes from Abrahamic times, but then this is the essential bone of contention, I think. If the world can be divided according to some principle, then in my view there are only two. Those who worship Saguna as well as Nirgun, and those who worship only Nirgun as a matter of belief or what they have been told according to a prophet, not as a matter of realization.
Not quite right. Of course, I think we discussed this last time also, and how Tulsidas ji describes us beautifully as far as our culture is concerned. Agun nahi, sagun nahi, nahi kachu beda, ga wahi, muni puran abudha veda. Agun nahi, agun arup alak ajajoi, bhagat prem bas sagun sohoi. So that is how you realize. But talking of rituals, of course, this is this funny thing that they call everything else as false belief or false gods. And of course, all the people who say superstitions, they call these our rituals, or in the context of India, the Hindu rituals are superstition. But virgin birth and flat earth is truth.
No, not only that, Dikshit ji, the whole ritual of Eucharist, in which you take the wine and the bread as flesh and blood of Christ, it's a cardinal ritual of Christianity.
Yes.
That is considered as sacred and true. So if I take bread because this is the flesh of Christ. And I take wine because that is the blood of Christ. And I eat it. In other words, I unite my body with the body of Christ. Now this is considered to be a perfect ritual. But any other ritual of any other denomination or religion is considered to be false or devilish. You see, so this is where Christianity is divided. In its own heritage, in its own theology. Yeah, please go ahead.
Can you explain it a little further? Is this ritual different in the different churches?
Well, it is different in the sense that some only give a biscuit and some give a loaf of wine, and throughout history the whole thing has developed. But the central concept, it is related to what Christ said in his Last Supper, because he distributed the bread and he distributed the wine, and then he said that you treat this as me, because I shall be no more, and now this is me. Now that whole ritual is cardinal to Christianity, and the doctrine of Eucharist, or the practice and the ritual of Eucharist, is absolutely essential to every church, almost every denomination.
And they have the call to call the others rituals as superstition or false belief.
Yes.
And this very, what I should say, outlandish kind of a ritual, which doesn't even have a philosophical basis. Because at least all Indian rituals have a philosophical basis of recognizing the unity of the creator with the creation.
Right.
And that is a definite philosophical basis, and all rituals actually lead to that.
Now,
whereas this particular ritual, or the Christian ritual, has absolutely no basis.
I'll give you another. I'll give you another example of their lack of logic, if I can put it very anemically, or if I want to put it very bluntly, then I can even say an example of their hypocrisy. You see, they will never accept a three-dimensional idol. That is a statue or a murti. But Christianity has been, right from very early days, making paintings, two-dimensional, you know. They have been making paintings of their saints, paintings of Christ, paintings of the story of Christ. So to paint the whole saga of Christ and to paint it as a ritual, because painting was considered as a mode of worship in Christianity. It is still considered. I have been to some of the most sacred centers of Christian practices, like Mount Athos, where the priests spend years and years in doing the holy paintings. And there is a great, great tradition of holy painting. Now that painting, the holy painting, or what they call the icones, is sacred, it's justifiable. But if you make, instead of that two-dimensional painting, if you make it three-dimensional, that is, if you make it into a sculpture, into a body, then that is devilish. Then that is not permitted. Then that is like creating another human being. Then that is taking upon yourself the right which only God can exercise. So these are things which can never be explained by Christianity. And these are things that Christianity is kind of is caught up with forever and ever. Unless they open up, and once they open up, then they lose much of their theology.
Yes, they do. The Christianity is losing very fast as science grew and people started regard people as people started privileging direct evidence over the evidence of the Word, because I think in John it is said then there was Word, and Word was with God, and Word was God. So they only emphasize what is called the scriptural evidence.
Right.
And scriptural evidence is higher than anything else.
Right.
But science puts scriptural evidence right at the end, exactly as the Sanatana philosophy does, because
also Christianity misinterpreted the whole Greek idea. You see, the Greek is to archi-elos. That is, in the beginning there is the Word. Now the Word is something, or the Logos is not just the word of the prophet. The Logos in the ancient Greek world is a knowledge system. It is something different. So in the beginning there is a knowledge system. In the middle there is a knowledge system. In the end there is a knowledge system. Knowledge system is not what the prophet said. So this was again one of the distortions of the ancient doctrine which the Christians took over. Did.
Yes, but ultimately the effect is that they put the word of Bible as the ultimate evidence.
Yeah.
Exactly as Islam does, in fact, all the Abrahamic religions do.
Exactly.
That is scriptural evidence, the highest evidence, and that is how in Islam you have this funny example of Ahmad Raza Barelvi writing 3 volumes to prove that the earth is flat. And the same thing is done by many Christians over the 2000 years. The word of Bible that the earth is flat and that there is virgin birth. And why virgin birth? Because they cannot reconcile the birth of Christ through normal human endeavor.
Exactly.
As something normal. that is a sin, because the very act of copulation became a sin because of the knowledge that Eve and Adam gathered through eating the fruit of knowledge.
Right.
So the whole doctrine is actually, you can say it's doing a headstand. But then that's how it is. And before we go to the audience questions, just a small mention I just wanted to make that this is what Christianity does with knowledge systems or with great cultures where it doesn't have direct power with it, but where it can do, it also inflicts terrible violence, as it did in South America, as it did in Africa, as in fact it even tried to do in our own Goa. So it's not that these are the primary tactics. Where it can, it will indulge in the other tactics as well.
Yes, and the tactics of coercion today are soft tactics like maligning, like misrepresenting, the huge amount of stories which are generated about India, the untruths which are generated about each and every small event. For instance, today about the farmers' agitation, the amount of untruth which is being manufactured by New York Times and Washington Post and a huge number of media outlets is part of that destructive violence. That you misrepresent so much that you totally change the whole story to your own advantage. That is an act of violence, a clear act of violence. And that is practiced in the modern world, not with the sword, but with the pen.
Right. I think we can move to the audience questions now.
Yes, certainly.
And I would request all my viewers to please like, subscribe and share, and also press the bell icon so that they can get all the notifications in time and they're able to watch all the videos we put in, because we're putting in a lot more videos than we used to do earlier. And at the same time, we request you to please continue with your support, and yes, if you can be a little more generous, that would be just perfect. Okay, let's move to the audience questions.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Okay, Pahil Gupta, the first question. So please tell something about St. Xavier from Goa.
Well, that's a very specific historical question. I mean, you can read about it. It's very typical of the fact that St. Xavier was the victor because the Portuguese had conquered the place. It's a very different kind of a story. And there is, I think, somewhere in Goa, a church in front of which there is a statue in which St. Xavier with a big sword is shown as defeating, almost killing, like St. George killed the dragon, the local king. So this is the whole paradigm of it. I mean, the details, of course, are very big.
Details are available. It is actually a terrible chapter in the Goa story.
Yeah.
And well, one can say that if you remove the saint part from it, and if you present it with that story, then you would probably think that you're reading the story of a criminal. But then he's been given sainthood, so that you can very well read. There's a beautiful video that was made by Shefali Vaidya on the Goa Inquisition. I would recommend you to look at that. Rupa Rao, Guruji Pranam, Hindus celebrate Christmas and New Year, but no Christian celebrates any Hindu festival. How do you explain to Hindus to stop doing this?
Well, I think what's most essential is to ask Hindus a very simple question. Why do you celebrate Christmas? Do you want to kind of please a Christian and show that you are a harmless fellow Indian? But the fact is that the Christian will never reciprocate by celebrating Diwali or Holi. And I think we should start saying that, look, I will celebrate Christian, come and have participate in your dinner on Christmas, provided you do that and celebrate Holi with me. If you play Holi with me, or if you celebrate, or if you believe in Rama in order to celebrate Diwali. You see, the very fact is that a Christian has to believe that there are others. The approach of the Britishers in India was to study India, to administer it well, to know India so that they could capture India, keep it under their control. That was the major purpose. They were happy if some people got converted, but the Britishers knew very well that if they let loose the evangelists, then there would be serious problems. So I think we should be aware of this historical fact and judge different individuals accordingly.
And yes, I think also the 1857 also cooled their enthusiasm about evangelization quite a good deal. So that was also a reason.
Yeah.
Next one. Aman Walia, Namaste sir. If Christians are wearing a mask as is a Christian, say wearing a mask is an act of hypocrisy, did some of the Crusaders wear masks? Isn't that hypocrisy on their part?
No, Christians don't wear a mask. They think that those who wear a mask are hypocritical. Please don't get me wrong.
Talking about a metaphorical mask.
But yes, if you are talking of that, then obviously proselytizing is hypocrisy. Proselytizing is hypocrisy through and through. And even Christ wanted people to be converted and change religion to Christianity, and he gave that order. I think it is Matthew's 28:19 where he says so. Last time in one of the shows I read out the original Greek and informed you about it. You can check up. So this is part of in order to proselytize, they will do anything, any hypocritical thing. Hypocrisy is permitted because then it is considered to be an act of God.
Yes, this is Matthew's 28:19.
Yeah.
Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations.
Yeah.
Baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, exactly. Last time I read out this original. Porefthente sun matitef sate panda et mi. This is the original in Greek. You see.
Right. Yeah. So next one, Kumar Sagar Singh Pariyar. In my school, there used to be a different subject for Christians called religious study, while we had value education. We were strictly not allowed there.
Well, I know I have been through that phase because I went to a Christian college and we used to have a morning Christian class, which was largely, part of it was service, regular Christian service. But they were doing it very moderately, at least 50 years ago when I was a student. I don't know how they're doing it exactly now. But this was a soft way of of introducing Christian values. You see, today everybody talks about moral education. Even the BJP and RSS talk about value education, which is just another version of moral education. So this moral education was a tactic used by the Christians to preach a belief. You see, the Indian religions, they don't preach a belief. They ask you to do an activity. It is Shila, or an activity which is very important. It is not just Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. It is also Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami, Buddham Sharanam and Sangham Sharanam. So in company of others, you do certain rituals. You do certain sadhana, you do certain practice, and once you have started doing that practice, then you are taught about the philosophy of a thing. Whereas the Christian and the Islamic approach is exactly the opposite, that you are taught right in the beginning a doctrine. That this is the true doctrine, and stop believing in the false doctrine. And this whole business of moral education was part of that Christian urge to proselytize others. That's why I'm not very anxious about so-called value education, which was promoted by BJP in its BJP 1 99 to 2004 and even later. I think we should do it the Hindu way. That is, ask people to get involved in practicing something. Practice meditation, practice art, practice different sciences which are part of our tradition. So do a Vidya Abhyas and then you will get to the value, not the other way.
All right. Aditya, so if idol worship is satanic, then the same should be applied to the Roman Catholic denomination in India and the world. Why there is such hypocrisy and how can we bring this under mainstream awareness? That's what we are trying to do, by the way.
I think the problem can be tackled by speaking out. Just as you have spoken out just now, that it is hypocrisy. Similarly, we should engage Christians and Muslims about their fundamental values and engage them at every step. That's the only way.
Right. Okay, so Aditya, so okay, this question is done. And the next one. Jyoti Samaria, Namaskar sir. Inquisition includes violence, corruption and superstition. Yesterday's sessions of 3G was spine-chilling. How can Christians call it a religion of love? That's what I was saying. You are only kind of endorsing what we have said so far. I think we take the next one. Jyoti ji, Namaskar sir. Some say that after crucifixion, Christ came down from the cross and made people believe that he's Son of God. Some say that Christ died somewhere else, but not on the cross. Your views, please. And the India link.
I don't think I have done any deep research into it. There are dozens and dozens of books on this and too many opinions. So I leave it at that, whether it was a historical truth or it was a later belief generated in order to boost Christianity. There are many kinds of evidences, many kinds of evidences.
I can just add, actually, the Christian truth is not an immutable truth, according to the Christian councils themselves, because I think they've had 8 or 9 what is called the initial councils.
Yeah.
And later on also they've had so many other councils. And it was only in the fifth, I think it was the fifth ecumenical council, 553, when they actually pronounced a curse on cyclical time. Until that time, they had the notion of the cyclical time. Then the church, once it got power, then it realized that in cyclical time, and because they misunderstood cyclical time as what is called eternal recurrence, so then they thought that Christ would have to die again and again. So that was something that was, as we use the word, anathema to them. And then they said, okay, no, cyclical time is no good. Whereas in the first 3 centuries, they were very much with cyclical time, they were very much with the rebirth idea, all that was there.
That's true.
They keep changing.
Yeah.
An interesting fact I would like to tell her is that the same Catholic Church, which actually persecuted Galileo and persecuted many others for saying that the earth was round, it quietly in 1992, it accepted that the earth is round. So, Christians are far too smart and cunning than Islamists who only believe in brute power and the sword. The next one. Jyoti Sinha, a few days ago, I think this last question, Jyoti Samaria, we'll shortlist. It was a good question because we have to also do our own ritual of selecting the best question. Jyoti Sinha, a few days ago, 5 Koreans were caught up in converting people by giving them books and money. There's a video in Op India of them doing same in Bihar. They are doing cultural subversion, appropriation and genocide. How to stop this? This is giving me sleepless nights. Please explain how to stop them in detail. Jyoti ji, this is actually a weakness of law enforcement because anybody who is coming on a tourist visa is not supposed to do that. If he is caught doing that, then there is strict action and he's supposed to be immediately deported. But this is happening a lot, and now people have started waking up, and there are a few handles on Twitter I can suggest to you. You can follow them, and you can also bring it to their knowledge because they are taking it up with the authorities legally, and when they do take up with the authorities, there is action. So one is Mission Kali, and the other is this Legal Research Organization, Legal Research Observatory, LRO. They are both on Twitter. I would advise all of you to be in touch with them, and whenever you see this kind of an activity, please report to them immediately. And please report to the authorities also immediately. So if this kind of awareness spreads, then it will be very difficult for these people to operate. And some of these FCRA restrictions that have been imposed on some very big organizations have happened only because of the awareness brought in by the people and the reportings that
I'd like to add one thing here. You see, the Article 25, which is commonly quoted as the article only provides you to practice, profess, practice and propagate, but not convert. You see, propagate does not mean conversion. Propagate only means that I talk about my belief, I talk about my religion. I can hold seminars, I can make others aware, invite others to come in, but I can't go into their houses. I can't go aggressively and as an article of faith convert them and call right to convert. A lot of Christians and Muslims are saying today that Article 25 gives them the right to convert because they interpret propagate as the right to convert. So we should tell them that no, propagate only means कि आप इसके बारे में चर्चा कर सकते हैं, but you cannot do an activity which is called proselytization.
Yes, I think this is a good question. It should be shortlisted. I would also add that this question of anti-conversion laws went right up to the Supreme Court, and the very same argument was taken between propagation and conversion. And the Supreme Court came down very hard at it. It upheld the validity of those laws and said very clearly that propagation does not mean conversion. So that is the law of the land, and everyone should be aware of that. Okay, this is Jyoti Sinhaji. So we have shortlisted 2 questions. Next one. No, this is done. This is Jyoti Sinha.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is done. This question is done.
yeah. I think this was the last question.
Now, they are, Jyoti Sinha, they are very strong in Jharkhand. One of the groups entered my college, government college, and started preaching to me about Jesus. I told them I'm a convent product and ran away. They have converted a large number of tribals with state patronage, in my opinion. Yes, we are aware of that. We are aware of that, and I think the steps are being taken by the government, but ultimately it will have to be a people's movement. Next one. Okay, 3rd question by Jyoti again. Their strength doesn't lie just in foreign fundings. They have vast tracts of land and businesses. One such is Sitagara in Jharkhand. Just nationalize these properties. How do I know this? My school sisters wanted me to be a nun. Whereas one of them ran away with a brother from another school. Yes, Jyoti ji, I think we can agree with you. That's what we can do here on this. And the reason that we have this discussion today is because we also heard these kind of stories, and we thought that people at large were unaware of these things, so we must bring it to their attention, because ultimately when the society is alive to this danger, only then the things will change, because the government and the police can do only so much. The society will have to take up the cudgels on behalf of the Hindus. Amit Palsara, your views on Sant Isanath as Jesus Christ in India?
Well, it's a joke.
Okay, next one. Parth Deva Bundela, sir, what are your thoughts on upcoming TV serial Yeshu? They've also started to telecast faith healing in morning. Is it missionary tactics? Yes, it is.
It
If
is.
Yeshu doesn't do well, then you know what the commercial TV does with these. You don't watch it. As simple as that. And tell others also not to watch it. Next. Saptarshinath, we have started thinking from Western side of Christian education. We are playing on their field, they control it. Yes, that's right. That's very correct, and our education system comes very handy for them. The next one. Does Sanatan needs a concentrated dharmic evangelization movement like Arya Samaj and ISKCON? How do they unified representation of Dharma philosophy as a unit? What role visual communication can play in this? I think this is a good question, sir, for you.
Very good question. You see, I think what you are talking about is some kind of a combat to Christian and Islamic proselytization by unifying different denominations of Hinduism or sampradayas. Now, I think that is not the way to go about it, because it is not that you have to change yourself in the image of somebody else in order to defeat somebody else. You see, you have to be yourself. So let us maintain our sampradayas, let us maintain our rituals, our practices, our traditions. At the same time, we question the very faith and the very system which the evangelists use. So it has to be at the level of a shastra. It has to be at the level of a intellectual combat. You have to give them a combat which is like looking at their own philosophies, their own doctrines, and questioning them. That's the only way of doing it. Not by making a unity or something like a big unified dharmic front. That's what I would say. So we all have to do it at different levels in the country. आपकी
We
आवाज
have to maintain our plurality.
Yeah.
Brajesh, why shouldn't Hindus propagate dharma in the northeast amongst tribals? They still have Vedic elements, sacred groves, forest in their worship.
Well, I am one who believe that Hindus should talk about their faith, they should talk about their different sampradayas, and they should start an activity which can be considered as a counter. To say that Hinduism does not bring others into its fold is wrong. Hinduism has always been bringing others into its fold. Right up to Japan and China, it influenced. But it did it in a very different way. It did it by intellectually convincing people, not by allurement, not by deceiving, not by saying that this kind of a medicine will cure you. You see, all kinds of allurements are not long lasting. They are deceits. So you do it exactly in the philosophic manner in which our tradition is.
Quite right, sir. So that is the true propagation as compared to the coercion and allurement tactics that the Christians employ. So thank you very much, viewers. I think we have had a wonderful discussions and greatly enlightened by Bharatji in today's discussion. And I'm sure that this kind of a discussion is really the thing that we need to actually take it into the camp of the adversary, because they are the ones who treat us as the adversary. And somebody, if he is treating you the adversary, you have no business to treat him as a friend. Okay, that is yo yatha vartate yasmin tasmin neva pravartayan na dharmam samavapnoti na cha sheyasya vindati. Bhishma told that to Parshuram when Parshuram insisted that he will have to carry out his commandment. So he said, okay, jaise ko taisa. That's the meaning of this, essence of this shloka. So thank you, sir. Thank you, Bharatji. Thank you to all viewers. Wonderful having you here. Namaskar. Jai Hind. Vande Mataram.
Vande Mataram.